During his deposition, the doctor was being a royal pain in the butt. He refused to answer my questions directly. You want to know what I did to straighten that out and make sure it didn't happen again? Come join me on this walk through the neighborhood as I share with you exactly what I did and how it changed the dynamic of this deposition. Hi, I'm Gerry Oginski. I'm a New York medical malpractice and personal injury attorney. Okay, I was questioning a doctor in a medical malpractice case. This is known as a pretrial question and answer session that's given under oath in the doctor's attorney's office. There's no judge there and there's no jury there, but there is a court stenographer there, court reporter there to record all of my questions and all of the doctor's answers. In this particular case, there were 4 defense lawyers, 1 for the doctor and 3 other defense lawyers and myself and the court stenographer. During the deposition, I was focused on this particular note that the doctor wrote. And I asked him, "Doctor, on this particular date, did you ask him for how long his particular cough lasted?" And instead of answering yes or no, he said, typically what I do in this instance is I go ahead and I ask them a series of questions. I said, "Excuse me, doctor, I didn't ask you what you typically do. I said, did you record anything in your note for that particular visit that would indicate the duration in which this patient had this cough?" And there was silence for a total minute as he's scouring his particular office record. And finally, he comes to the conclusion that I knew he had to reach, which was, "No, I didn't." Okay, so why couldn't he have just said that? Why couldn't he have just come right out? Why? Because the doctor was being a jerk. Because the doctor had been prepped by his attorney to try and explain every single answer if possible. As part of the preparation for this attorney's deposition, what he's told is, listen, I want you to go ahead and explain everything possible. So don't allow the attorney to lock you into just a yes or no answer. When possible, go ahead and explain. So that's why every single question that I asked him about his notes, he went ahead and tried to explain, and something that should have been a yes or no answer that would have taken a fraction of the time for him to answer simply dragged on for hours. Why? Because this doctor refused to acknowledge that he did anything wrong. So I'd ask him another question. "Doctor, is there anything in your record to indicate and reflect that you asked the patient the following questions?" "Well, typically what I do," "Doctor, I didn't ask you typically. I'm not asking for your custom and practice. If I wanted to ask you questions about your custom and practice, then I most certainly would have asked you about your custom and practice." So let's go back to the question that I asked, doctor, which was, is there anything in your office record to reflect that you asked this patient about this particular problem? And now, after more silence, scouring through the record again, the doctor looks up and says, "No, I didn't. There's nothing in that record." Okay. "Doctor, did you record anything to indicate that the patient told you about X, Y, and Z?" Well, and then he'd go ahead and give me some other type of explanation. So what I would continue to do throughout the course of this question and answer session is I would continue to go back to my original question. I would remind the doctor, "Hey, doctor, I didn't ask you that question, did I?" And then he'd have to say no, right? He has to say no because I didn't ask him that question. Or he'd say, "Oh, could I have the question read back?" Now I'll have the question read back by the court stenographer, and I will say, "Doctor, is there anything in that question that asks about your custom and practice?" And he'd say no. I said, "Fine, let's go back to my original question, which was, is there anything in your record to reflect that you recorded X, Y, and Z?" "No, there isn't." And I just kept doing this over and over again. Why? Because the doctor was being a pain in the butt, intentionally. He was trying to screw around with me, all because he thought that would help his case, that would help his defense, and his attorney had clearly prepped him to do that. Now, does it help his case doing that? No, in my opinion, the doctor would have been much better off simply acknowledging or saying, "Listen, it's not in the record. It's not in the record. No, there's nothing in the record." Now, you should know something. There are some attorneys who would get so furious to allow the doctor's attorney to go ahead and ask follow-up questions. Well, I'll tell you something. It's actually really important. If the attorney wants to go ahead and ask follow-up questions, that's fine. You want to know why? Because ultimately, if the case goes to trial, that's exactly the defense that they're going to raise, and I want to know what the doctor's exact defense is if we get to trial. So why don't I want to know that earlier rather than later? I don't want to be surprised and ambushed 2 years down the road. Now we finally get to trial, and the doctor comes up with this harebrained excuse or this reason why he's not responsible. I want to know what their reasoning and their rationale is now during the course of the deposition so that I'm fully prepared to attack it during the course of trial. So why do I share this quick information with you? I share it with you because it's a beautiful day today here in Great Neck, and I thought you'd benefit from this great information that nobody talks about. Really, what goes on behind the scenes in these medical malpractice cases. You know, I realize you likely have questions or concerns about your own matter. Well, if your matter did happen in New York, and you have not yet started a lawsuit and still have questions that need to be answered, what I invite you to do is pick up the phone and call me. You know, I answer questions like yours every single day, and I'd love to talk to you. You can reach me at 516-487-8207 or by email at Gerry, Gerry, at oginski-law.com. That's it for today's video. I'm Gerry Oginski. Have a great day.